Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Bradley, and I will be your moderator. Thank you for joining us today for the first webinar in our series with Stan Garfield, Profiles in Knowledge, Part 1, Analytics, AI, Search, Taxonomy, and Technology. Before we start, I would like to provide some information about our company and introduce today's presenter. Lucidea is a software developing company specialized in museum and archival collections management solutions, as well as knowledge management and library automation systems. Our brands include Sydney, Presto, Argus, Archivera, Eloquent, and Quadrastar. Now I would like to take a moment to introduce today's presenter, Stan Garfield. Stan is a respected knowledge management practitioner, author, speaker, and community leader. He has provided us with many great webinars that are listed on our website, so please feel free to check those out after today's session. Take it away, Stan.
Thank you, Brad, and welcome to everyone to today's session. We have a lot we're going to cover, and I want to encourage you to come back after this session to review any of the slides that you want in more detail. So as I go through it, the pacing that I'll provide may be a little bit too fast for being able to look at all the slides, but because this is on a recording, you can pause the recording at any time, take a close look at any of the slides, and I encourage you to do so. This series kicks off with one of four in a series on profiles and knowledge. I've been writing that as a weekly blog, appearing in the Lucidea's Think Clearly blog now for some time. And we're all together when we're done, we'll have finished with 60 women, which we've already profiled, and we've started out now into the 60 men. They're going to be grouped into 20 categories. We'll do 4 webinars of 5 categories each and fit the 120 thought leaders into those categories. And then later this year, my next book will be published by Lucidea Press, including all 120 of the thought leaders. Today's categories out of the 20 altogether are going to be these 5: analytics, artificial intelligence, search and findability, taxonomy, and technology. Let's start with analytics and business intelligence by defining those two terms. Analytics, the discovery and communication of meaningful patterns in data and text, and business intelligence, the ability for an organization to take all its capabilities and convert them into knowledge using these components of business intelligence, including such things as data mining and data warehouses. Thought leaders that fit into this category are Irma Becerra, Tom Davenport, Gene Harris, and Jay Leibowitz. Let's start with Irma Becerra, who in addition to being a thought leader in the areas of business intelligence, is also the president of Marymount University in Arlington, Virginia. She's written books and articles, she's done original research, she's been a speaker in various fields, and a contributor to the Forbes Business Council, writing on topics that include business management, proven practices, and leadership. Irma's books that you see here include Business Intelligence, Knowledge Management Challenges, Solutions, and Technologies, Knowledge Management and Evolutionary View, and Knowledge Management Systems and Processes in the AI Era. And for each of the thought leaders, we're going to share with you 1 or 2 graphics that depict some insights and principles that they've written about. So for Irma, we're going to talk to this one, Technologies Enabling Business Intelligence Capabilities. And what Irma has done is laid out 4 building blocks of business intelligence, and then next to each one of these are the individual capabilities that enable it. So you have organizational memory at the bottom, which includes such things as data warehousing, document management. The next is information integration, which includes environmental scanning and text and web mining. Creation of insights, which includes data mining and business analytics, and presentation, which includes visualization, digital dashboards, and scorecards. Next is Tom Davenport. Tom is the Distinguished Professor of Information Technology Management at Babson College. He's the co-founder of the International Institute for Analytics. He's a senior advisor to Deloitte Analytics, and he's been a thought leader in the field of knowledge management since its beginning, and has evolved over time to move through such topics beyond knowledge management of analytics, big data, and then currently into artificial intelligence. And he pioneered the concept of competing on analytics. Tom has actually written a lot of books. You see them all here. I think it's 16 altogether. And if you focus in on the bottom right, you'll see the ones that specifically relate to big data and analytics, including Big Data at Work, Competing Analytics and Analytics at Work. But I also want to point out that he's also written about AI more recently. You see those in the upper left. And his books on knowledge management, including the one in the lower left, Working Knowledge, that he co-wrote with Larry Prusak, is considered still one of the definitive books in the field of knowledge management. Tom has defined 3 different eras of analytics, starting with traditional analytics, which were primarily descriptive analytics and reporting, then moving through big data, and then on to a third era, fast business impact for the data economy, which blends together traditional analytics and big data. And now he would probably extend this further into the area of artificial intelligence. Next is Jean Harris, who is actually a collaborator of Tom's. She led Accenture's business intelligence, analytics, performance management, KM, and data warehousing practices, had research interests in a variety of fields you see there, and her specialties include analytics along with the other things listed there below. The 2 books that Jean has co-authored, both with Tom Davenport, are Competing on Analytics and Analytics at Work. And for her insight, chose the graphic that shows leading organizations are embedding the full scope of analytic capabilities across their business. So she's got a graph that moves across the left with sophistication of intelligence and up and down with the area of competitive advantage. And at the bottom, you see descriptive analytics, which is more of the what. And at the top, you see predictive analytics, which is more of the so what. So she's showing how analytics evolves into more sophistication as you move from descriptive to predictive analytics. Jay Leibowitz is a professor, consultant, author, and editor, a variety of research interests, which include data analytics. He was the first knowledge management officer at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, been the founding editor-in-chief of Expert Systems with Applications, and most impressively, published over 45 books and many journal articles. And we'll take a look at some of his books, but this is just a subset of his. These are the ones that Jay has written or edited on analytics, business intelligence, and artificial intelligence. So you see that he's been quite prolific. His analytic books include knowledge management analytics, online learning analytics, business analytics, data analytics, and then you see a variety of books also on big data and related fields. They defined this analytics conceptual framework, which moves from BI enablers, which include such things as culture and data and sponsorship, through to BI analytics strategy, growing market share, providing reliable insights, improving risk management, and moving into essentially a BI roadmap, listing the success factors underneath for business intelligence. Our second category today is artificial intelligence. And the definitions, there are quite a few terms in the field of AI today and new ones being added regularly. Starting with artificial intelligence, the capacity of a computer to perform operations analogous to learning and decision-making in humans. Machine learning, which is giving computers the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. And of course, of late, we were hearing a lot about generative AI, which is artificial intelligence capable of generating text, images, synthetic data, or other media using generative models. And as part of that is typically a large language model, which achieves general purpose language generation by learning statistical relationships from text documents during a computationally intensive, self-supervised and semi-supervised training process. So it's a lot of words, but we're all now paying a lot of attention to these large language models and the generative AI tools like ChatGPT from OpenAI. And so this has become an area that's very important to knowledge management. Many people now are getting into it. Just about all literature starts to include it, and products start to feature it as well. The thought leaders that I featured here today include Seth Early, Sue Feldman, Sidney Gordon, Rashad Nari, Kate Pugh, and Tony Rem. You've also seen several of the earlier people I listed on analytics who are also involved with artificial intelligence. So these categories actually combine and intersect. Start with Seth Early. Seth is the CEO and founder of Early Information Science, which is a professional services firm. They specialize in artificial intelligence, information architecture, knowledge management, And his current work covers cognitive computing, knowledge engineering, data management systems. But Seth traditionally had a strong background in taxonomy, ontology, and metadata governance. So that's still a big part of his work in AI, but that's what his background includes. He has written 2 books. The current one, probably the most relevant, is The AI-Powered Enterprise, but previously had written a book along with Wendy Pose on practical knowledge management using the Lotus Knowledge Discovery System. For the insight from Seth, we'll talk about generating and retrieving and the differences between them. So large language models can be used to process queries and present results, but Seth is drawing a distinction between when you just retrieve information or whether you generate a response based on large language models. So one of them is more involved with just finding proprietary information and non-public IP and retrieving it, and the other is generating a response based on publicly available information. So one has the ability to not compromise or expose internal IP, and the other one you have to be careful with, because if you point a large language model or a generative AI tool at your internal data, you have the risk of that being exposed. Next, we'll talk about the late Sue Feldman. Sue was the founder and CEO of Synthexis, which was a consulting firm that provided services in the areas of cognitive computing, search, and text analytics technologies. She's known for her expertise in search, as well as analytics and AI. She spoke frequently at industry events, and she led a coalition of industry experts to define cognitive computing. So for a while, artificial intelligence was the term back 40 years or so ago, and then along the way, cognitive computing became the term that was used, and now it's back to using artificial intelligence. So it's always interesting to watch those kinds of trends. A couple of books that Sue wrote, The Answer Machine, and also The Internet at a Glance. And this slide from Sue is about cognitive computing, talking about the context of AI and then the components you see around the sides that go into it. So rules and models, predictive analytics, business intelligence, databases, knowledge bases, all part of the adaptive learning systems that then feed into the trends, alerts, analyses, decision support, and answers that cognitive computing enables, which result in hypotheses, and then they go in 2 directions with the user. The user can receive these as well as generate them. Cindy Gordon is the CEO and founder of SalesChoice.com. She's a thought leader in disruptive innovation, software as a service, AI, and advanced analytics. She's written 14 books on these topics. Her specialties include machine learning, natural language processing, analytics, and data science. And in the field of AI, she focuses on ethical AI, AI governance, and AI for business. She's written a number of books. Here are the ones I've selected to share, talking about the AI dilemma, her most recent one, Winning at Collaboration Commerce, Business Goes Virtual, Social Roots, and Realizing the Promise of Corporate Portals. A couple of slides from Cindy. The first one on AI ethics, the big 4 components of ethics being data bias, accountability, privacy, and explainability. And then the second slide, creating sustainable AI strategy, starting with having a digital literacy imperative, moving through ethical AI foundations, integrated functions of data analytics, AI, and risk, up through talent development, and finally AI projects for good and value. Rashad Nari leads GE's renewable energy organization in organizational learning, knowledge sharing, and virtual collaboration. He specializes in generative AI and has written a fair amount about it, been very active in the community that I lead, the SIKM leaders, by presenting, participating in calls, answering questions, and sharing his useful insights. So if you join that community and follow Rashad posts whenever we're talking about AI, which is quite often nowadays, his contributions are very useful. He's written a chapter and the preface to the book, Knowledge Management and Research Innovation in Global Higher Education Institutions. And a couple of slides from Rashad. The first one shows a large number of different AI-related tools that he's evaluated. He's done a comparative study of 100 generative AI-based tools. in the context of learning and knowledge management. And then he's got a summary here of where these tools tend to fit into different categories, ranging from AI infrastructure and cognitive services through content and collaboration platforms, customer service, learning and development, sales and marketing. And you can see customer service being the overwhelming largest area where these tools are applied currently. Yu has been involved in the field for a long time of knowledge management, but currently is focusing more on artificial intelligence. She also works with large language models and organizational transformation. Her expertise is in inclusive conversation models, quantifying the impact of conversation, and a variety of other things that you see listed there. So Kate has been a knowledge management thought leader for some time, but currently focusing not only on AI, but also specifically about AI and conversation. A couple of books that she has written and edited: Sharing Hidden Know-How and Smarter Innovation Using Interactive Processes to Drive Better Business Results. She's defined 5 discussion disciplines when she talks about conversation: integrity with inquiry, courtesy, inclusion, and translation. So these are the steps she'd like to see in terms of discussions that are effective, and she goes into further detail about each of those. Tony Rem is the CEO of AJ Rem and Associates. He's also the fractional chief AI officer, and he's a consultant, educator, writer, author, strategist, and information architect. He presents on a variety of topics, but AI is one that he's been very active in of late. The books that Tony has written, his most recent one, Essential Topics in Artificial Intelligence, but he's also written about information architecture, knowledge management in practice, and developing knowledge management systems. Here, Tony has defined a curation process for artificial intelligence and machine learning applications, starting with data from various sources, then providing a data audit to determine what data is ready to be used, and then feeding that through a data analysis into a data lake, which is the initial load of prepared data, addressing any data gaps, and then feeding that into data selection and validation, leading to applying ethical data principles and conduct training of the algorithms that feed into AI and machine learning. Our next category is search and findability, and the definitions we'd like to apply here: search engines, which are tools that allow searching for sites, documents, files, and other content. Enterprise search, which is making content from multiple enterprise-type sources, such as databases and intranets, searchable to a defined audience through a single ubiquitous search engine. And findability, the ease with which information can be found, meaning that users can easily find the content or information they assume is present on a website. Our thought leaders in this area include Mary Ellen Bates, Agnes Molnar, and Peter Morville. Mary Ellen Bates is the founder of Bates Information Services. She's got 15 years of managing corporate information centers and specialized libraries. She started a business in 1991. She's received awards, and she's somebody who is looked up to as an expert in search. Written a number of books: Researching Online for Dummies, Super Searching, Reluctant Entrepreneur, Building and Running a Successful Research Business, Mining for Gold on the Internet, Super Searchers, Cover the World, and the Online Desk Book. In writing about indispensable information professionals building value in an AI world, she says that we should focus on our expertise, not our tasks. So information pros will find, evaluate, acquire, organize, analyze, distill, manage, share, and store information. What we do and how we work changes. Why we do it doesn't change. So in an AI world, there's a lot of discussion about, what will this do to people who work in knowledge-related jobs? Will it replace them, eliminate them? But she's pointing out that how we do things is going to change, and we'll take into account the availability of AI tools, Why we do it doesn't change, and we still need information professionals to do the tasks listed here. Agnes Molnar is the CEO of Search Explained. She specializes in information architecture and enterprise search. She's a consultant, speaker, mentor, author, and entrepreneur, and she seeks to create awareness regarding search options, techniques, and proven practices. She's the founding member of the Search Network, a global community of independent search professionals. A couple of books that she has written. One is SharePoint 2016 Search Explained, and the other is the Google Search Appliance Retirement Explained. Along with Patrick Lamb, she created this slide for architecting for a knowledge organization. So she has in here the context and purpose. She has techniques, and then she has a flowchart basically that goes through and feeds into things like information architecture, taxonomy, and metadata, into smart search and discovery services, and then you see how that kind of loops around in a circle. So this chart you can come back and study later when you review the video. Peter Morville is a pioneer in the fields of information architecture and user experience. He also specializes in organizational strategy and planning, and along with Lou Rosenfeld, he applied the principles of library science to solve issues of grouping and labeling on the early web. They dubbed their work information architecture, focused on the structure and organization of sites, and he co-authored Information Architecture for the World Wide Web, known as the Polar Bear book, which is the seminal book on information architecture. And here are a look at his books. Three of them have the very distinctive covers. The Polar Bear book, so named for the polar bear that appears on the cover, then Ambient Findability, Search Patterns, Intertwingled, and then he had also written a book, The Internet Searcher's Handbook. A couple of insights from Peter. First of all, the foundation of search. So he says the foundation starts with metrics, governance, and incentives. On top of that, you have the content that you're searching for. You use taxonomy, metadata, and navigation as a way to help locate it. And then the search engine employs those in the findability of the content underlying. Next is his user experience honeycomb, which he's published and has been widely used. And it includes the concepts of useful. The content has to be useful, usable, it has to be usable, desirable, people need to want it, has to be findable, we have to be able to locate it, it has to be accessible so people with disabilities can also take advantage of it, it has to be credible, that we trust and believe what it is, and it must be valuable. We must deliver value to our sponsors. So this honeycomb informs how we go about designing usability and how we do information architecture, keeping in mind these particular requirements for what we build. Next category is taxonomy. And taxonomy has this set of definitions that we use today. Taxonomy is a particular classification arranged in a hierarchical structure that can be used to organize information so that it can be readily found through navigation, search, and links between related content. Ontology is a set of concepts and categories in a subject area or domain that shows their properties and the relations between them. And metadata is the information about information, the data fields added to documents, sites, files, or lists that allow related items to be listed, searched for, navigated to, syndicated, and collected. Our thought leaders in taxonomy are Heden, Marty Hayon, Patrick Lamb, Wendy Pose, and Zack Wall. I'll also point out that some of the earlier thought leaders we mentioned were also well known for this, in particular Seth Early. And with Heden. Heather is an information management professional with a specialization in taxonomies, ontologies, metadata, and indexing. She designs, creates, and edits 'thesauri, metadata, and ontologies for indexing and tagging content to support content retrieval, search, and findability. She alternates full-time independent consulting with her employed experience, so she's gone back and forth between working for companies and being on her own, and she independently teaches an online course in taxonomy creation. She's written 2 books. The Accidental Taxonomist is in its 3rd edition, and she also wrote Indexing Specialties Websites. In her summary of controlled vocabulary types, moving from on the left from less to the right on more, in terms of complexity, we then look at the different columns going across, starting with a pick list, which would be the least complex, which attempts to do ambiguity control. Then you have a synonym ring for synonym control, an authority file for ambiguity control and synonym control, then a taxonomy, which has hierarchical relationships, a thesaurus, which adds associative relationships, finally to an ontology, which includes semantic relationships and classes. Marty Hayon designs, builds, and implements metadata solutions to enable the discovery of data, information, and knowledge. She's experienced in many facets of information management and knowledge organization, and she focuses on metadata architecture, including design, development, and implementation of controlled vocabularies, and also knowledge capture, storage, and retrieval. She has a book chapter in the book, Where Do We Go From Here? Not chart, specifying and selecting and processing blueprint. So starting with phase 0, defining your team. Phase 1, business requirements. Phase 2, functional requirements. Phase 3, features scorecard. Phase 4, vendor shortlist. Phase 5, live demos. Phase 6, analyze scores. Phase 7, vendor due diligence. Phase 8, purchase. And finally, phase 9, implement. So this is the process you go through to specify and select, and then process related to your taxonomy. Patrick Lamb, who we also saw a chart earlier that was co-developed, is a consultant and researcher in KM and in e-learning. He has a special interest in the soft systems, how and why people in social groups use, consume, and produce knowledge. He specializes in taxonomy development, knowledge audit, knowledge maps, expertise transfer, and knowledge management strategy development. His 2011 paper on the history of knowledge management, which was called The Unacknowledged Parentage of Knowledge Management, won a highly commended award in the Emerald Literati Network Awards for Excellence in 2012. And Patrick has a wide range of interests in knowledge management, but certainly taxonomy is one that he's well known for. His book, Organizing Knowledge, Taxonomies, Knowledge, and Organizational Effectiveness, is one of the key books in the area. And he's also written about other things. Along with Nick Milton, he wrote the Knowledge Manager's Handbook, which is a very useful book for people starting out in implementing knowledge management. And most recently, his book, Principles of Knowledge Auditing, Foundations for Knowledge Management Implementation, has come out and is another very important text. This is from a essentially poster that Patrick created called How to Build a Taxonomy, and it goes through different stages. This is the planning part of it. So starting with planning, what's your taxonomy supposed to achieve? Then moving through content warrant, what can existing content and organization systems tell us about vocabularies in use? Then through user warrant, who are the main users and what are the typical information tasks they perform? Then through facet analysis and drafting, cart sorting exercises, scenario testing. So this would be the planning part of building a taxonomy through these 6 steps. You'll notice that he mentions a knowledge audit is a very good way of collecting content and user warrant. It produces knowledge maps documenting how knowledge and information assets support key business activities. If organized around business activities, the maps give a comprehensive overview of the vocabulary describing information assets and the contexts in which they are used. So that means that his most recent book about knowledge audit also fits into this area of building a taxonomy. And then the next two phases of building a taxonomy are test and refine. So moving through scenario testing. After that, you go through passive testing, which is where the taxonomy is tested in real tasks in the field. You do balance load testing, issue resolution, and finalization. So these 10 steps, go back up one slide, we'll just show you going through here. We came down through the first of these steps through here and then continued on through here. So there's a two-part of a single poster that went through all 10 steps of building a taxonomy. Wendy Pose is the co-founder of InfoClear Consulting. She provided systems design, software tools, and technical consulting services to integrate semantic technology with IT systems. She focused on taxonomy integration, text analytics, intranet and website search relevance tuning, graph database design, and metadata management. And she developed a competitive intelligence retrieval system, which was successfully used for years by the Salesforce. Now, Wendy's retired, but her work still stands in the field of taxonomy. The books that Wendy wrote: Enterprise Taxonomies, A Business Professional's Guide to Taxonomies for Content Retrieval, and then, as we previously saw, the Practical Knowledge Management book, Wendy Pose, along with Seth Early, and then Upgrading to Lotus Notes and Domino 7. Wendy's contribution to this presentation is the semantic spectrum. What do you need to manage? And similar to the earlier chart that we saw from Heather Heden, moving along from simple to complex, this is similar to that chart in talking about increasing complexity, starting with a list, a flat list, a controlled vocabulary, moving to a taxonomy, which is hierarchical with parent-child relationships, into thesaurus, where you have equivalents and synonyms, and then on to ontology, where you have classes of many domains of interest, instances of specific things, relationships between those things, properties of those things, the functions and processes involving those things, and the constraints and rules involving those things. So as you start out in the area of taxonomy, you move through this kind of sequence of increasing complexity to where you end up not only developing taxonomies and thesauri, but also ontologies. Wendy's contribution here: how are taxonomies used? So you start by feeding standards, keywords, and tags, vocabularies, and entities through this transformation funnel. It comes out as XML, which is then fed into a model, load, manipulate, and manage change. You publish the XML. You then transform and integrate, and your outputs are data management, content management, tagging systems, search, and text analytics. Zack Wall is the CEO and co-founder of Enterprise Knowledge, the world's largest dedicated knowledge, data, and information management consultancy. He's got expertise in knowledge management strategy, governance, taxonomy, and content management. He's run over 250 taxonomy design workshops based on his own business taxonomy design methodology, and he conducts training on information governance, web strategy, and taxonomy design. His book, Making Knowledge Management Clickable, Knowledge Management Systems Strategy Design and Implementation, is a fundamental guide to getting knowledge management implemented. Here we have a contribution from Zack, one of two that I've included. This is taxonomy and metadata. So in that upper left box, you see a number of different file types. I've expanded those up in the upper right corner, so they include file types like PDF and zip files and text files and XML, doc files, and so forth. So that's the content, the information, the data, and the files. And then you have the metadata fields where you fill in things such as the metadata values of title, author, doc type, topic, department. which are done through free text entry, and then some of them are done through pulling out of a controlled vocabulary. So in that example, free text entry for the title, but then for doc type, you pull out of a list of brochures, manuals, memos, and so forth. And then for topic, you pull out from employee services with subtopics of compensation and so forth. And those are flat taxonomies, either flat or hierarchical controlled vocabularies. And then he's defined the interdependencies of taxonomies, saying that taxonomy design efforts seldom exist in a vacuum and probably shouldn't if they are. So here you see all the different things that go into taxonomy. It's right in the center there, but then it's surrounded by a number of other components that all have an impact on taxonomy. So including your content and document management, your search engine, your data warehouse, your content and data quality, and so forth. So a variety of things that all are related to and intersect with taxonomy. All right, so our fifth and final category for today's webinar is technology, which is a broad term in itself. And unlike the previous four categories, where we had definitions that fit in there, technology is so broad that we're not able to define it. Instead, what I've chosen to include here are the different focus areas that the people we're featuring under the thought leaders are specialized in. So these are the ones that we'll be seeing that fit with the people that follow. Electronic document management systems, portals, blogs, wikis, Microsoft 365, enterprise social networks, social technologies, digital transformation, digital workplace, intranets, and the effects of technology. These are the specialties of the thought leaders which we've grouped under technology for purposes of our webinar. The thought leaders that will feature are Carlo Frappalo, Sue Hanley, Bill Ives, Charlene Lee, Jane McConnell, James Robertson, and David Weinberger. Late Carlo Frappalo was the creator of Delphi's knowledge management methodology, KM2, the portal design and development methodology, PDDM, the e-learning methodology, ELM, and the stair-step design methodology. Carl was on the board of the Electronic Document Systems Foundation. He was recognized by AIIM as a Master of Information Technology and as an Information Systems Laureate, and he received the Distinguished Service Award by AIIM. 3 books that Carl wrote: Knowledge Management, Electronic Document Management Systems, A Portable Consultant, and Smart Things to Know About Knowledge Management. Carl provided a technology map to KM in which he listed different components that were part of KM at the time that he was writing these. And then he has his scale going from left to right are from the explicit knowledge, that which can be written down, through tacit knowledge, that which exists in our minds. So that's what's going across from left to right. And then he has different steps of intermediation, externalization, internalization, and cognition going up and down. So wikis, blogs, and social network analysis are examples of intermediation. Wikis, blogs, podcasting of externalization. RSS feeds, mashups, search, social tagging, and bookmarking, internalization. And mashups and RSS, cognition. So keep in mind this was written some time ago, but these were the terms at the time, especially when Web 2.0 was in vogue in the early 2000s. Sue Hanley is one of the leading experts on using Microsoft 365 and SharePoint for knowledge management and collaboration, and she emphasizes the people side of using Microsoft 365. She's the founder and president of Susan Hanley LLC, although previously she had certainly been a leader in the practice of knowledge management within companies. She specializes in information architecture, knowledge management, portals, and collaboration. And in her practice, she helps clients implement successful solutions that have a flexible and maintainable information architecture, an effective governance plan, a realistic plan for measuring results, and that reflect a design and implementation strategy that promotes user adoption. She wrote a number of books about SharePoint as each new version of SharePoint came out. She wrote a different edition. This one, Essential SharePoint 2013, Practical Guidance for Meaningful Business Results. A couple of slides from Sue. The first one, Better Together. One of the things that people are faced with today who are Microsoft users, which is a large number of users, is what the different products Microsoft offers do, how they interrelate, when to use one versus the other. This is a big part of what Sue consults with her clients on. So in particular, I often see the same questions asked about what's the difference between Microsoft Teams and Viva Engage? When do you use one versus the other? How does this tie to SharePoint? So Microsoft Teams is for collaborating with your work group to get work done. And Viva Engage is for connecting and engaging people across the organization, in particular for things like communities. And SharePoint is for creating compelling communications with multimedia and dynamic content. So you deploy Viva Connections to bring your SharePoint intranet to Teams. You add the Viva Engage app to Teams so that you can have communities that are broader than a specific work team. And you can embed Viva Engage conversations on relevant SharePoint pages. You can connect to organizational knowledge, promote SharePoint views, and so forth. So there's a lot of things that you can do if you understand what each is best suited for and how they can be integrated with one another. But if this is confusing, then someone like Sue is a good person to engage to help sort through it. She went further with this chart about what to use when. So she has Teams, SharePoint News, Viva Connections, Viva Engage, Post Viva Engage Announcement, and Email as the different vehicles. And then running down the left, you have audience, speed, tone, content, ability to share, in-company feed web part, yes or no, and include in News Digest, yes or no. So these tips can be helpful for what to use when. So if we take an example, Teams is good for a small audience, and Viva Engage is good for a broad audience. So it gives you an example of what Sue's defined here, but you can come back to refer to this chart in more detail. Bill Ives, the late Bill Ives, who unfortunately passed away last year, was one of the earliest and most prolific bloggers. He wrote about knowledge management, Web 2.0, and social media every weekday for a number of years. And on the weekends, he wrote about food, music, and art. He specialized in the business uses of Enterprise 2.0 tools, which we called it at the time, which included knowledge management, employee portals, performance support, learning, workforce performance strategy, and social business. He wrote the book Business Blogs, A Practical Guide, and he was certainly an active practitioner of blogging. In this particular slide, he talked about the different pieces of a blog post. So including the title banner for the blog with the description of what the blog itself was about. And then for each blog post, the date, the title, links to the sources that he would cite within his blog posts. He would tag it with a category. There'd be a permalink that was a unique web address that would lead you directly back to the blog post. There would be comments on the blog post and track back, which was links from other sites. So in the early days of blogging, Bill was certainly on the forefront of it. This was helpful to explain to other people how to use blogs and how they interrelated. And I was one of those early bloggers as well. And Bill and I would quote each other and link to each other's blogs using things like trackbacks and links between. So blogging is still active, but not to the greatest extent as it was back in the early 2000s. I still have my blog going, as do a few others, but others along the way have no longer persisted. Another slide from Bill talks about knowledge management as conversations. Those of you who have been familiar with my book, The 5 C's of Knowledge Management, that was published by Lucidea Press, will recognize this familiar theme of using a number of C's to make a point. In this case, Bill is using them to talk about the elements of conversations. So blogs provide a transparent virtual space for creation, where you can publish content, collection, where you can manage personal content in a searchable archive, context, applying commentary to the content you manage, connection, where you discover others with similar interests, conversation, engaging in dialogues on an organizational or global basis, community, building networks around your shared themes, and collaboration, finding new business partners and increasing teamwork within organizations. So he's got a scale along the right of individual, starting at the top, down through network. And he's basically saying that all of these things lower the barriers to entering the web, further reducing the cost of communication. A quote from Jim McGee, when barriers are lowered, new phenomena emerge. So Bill was certainly a big believer in this and practiced what he preached. He and I interacted a fair amount, and it's sad that Bill's no longer with us. Charlene Lee is involved in catalyzing transformation to maximize human potential. She's an author, speaker, advisor, and coach, specializing in disruption, digital transformation, leadership, customer experience, and the future of work. She writes about social media, social business, and enterprise social networks, and she's the founder and CEO of Quantum Networks Group. Number of books that Charlene has written: The Disruption Mindset, The Engaged Leader, Open Leadership, Groundswell, and the 7 Success Factors of Social Business Strategy. Along with Brian Solis, he published the 7 Success Factors of Social Business Strategy. And those are to have goals, the overall business goals, the vision, a long-term vision, support, which is executive support, strategy, defining the strategy roadmap and identifying the initiatives, guidelines, which are governance and guidelines for how you're going to operate, staff, securing the staff resources and funding, and finally 7, investing in technology platforms that support the greater vision and objectives. So this strategy can apply not only to social business, but also to knowledge management in general, or any of the sub-programs underneath it. Jane McConnell is an independent advisor on the digital workplace. She's an analyst practitioner with over 20 years of advising organizations on their internal digital strategies and 10 years of doing research. She wrote the first business-oriented internet book, published in French in 1996, and her specialties include longevity, the gig mindset, future thinking, and imagining possibilities. There's that first book about the internet business, which is in French, and then her most recent book, which is her new focus, The Gig Mindset Advantage, Why a Bold New Breed of Employee is Your Organization's Secret Weapon in Volatile Times. Here from Jane is the digital workplace vision, which is a combination of managed, collaborative, social, and mobile. So in this chart, you see the mobile dimension sort of circling the whole thing. You have social collaboration in the middle, above structured collaboration, and it's managed to the left. The components that in the interlocking Venn diagrams include the workforce, partners and clients, and the public. So Jane has done a good job of defining the digital workplace, and I encourage you to pursue her writing about this. James Robertson is a thought leader on intranet strategy and design, digital employee experience, digital workplaces, web content management, and technology selection. He's the founder and managing director of Step 2, a vendor-neutral consultancy in Australia. He helps organizations select a suitable intranet platform or web content management system, and he gives out the annual Intranet and Digital Workplace Award. So if you go to KM World in November each year, he has a representative, either he or one of his partners are there to present these Intranet and Digital Workplace Awards to deserving recipients. James has written 3 books about intranets: Essential Intranets, Inspiring Sites That Deliver Business Value, Designing Intranets, Creating Sites That Work, and What Every Intranet Team Should Know. He's published this elaborate poster called the Intranet Roadmap. I've reproduced it here in 2 slides because you have to break it into 2 parts. Running along the top, you have strategy, design, content, changing communications, and technology. And then running down each column, you have the specific steps that you follow for each one of these. So once again, you can return to study this, or you can download a copy of the roadmap from James' Step 2 site. But the details are there for how you go about implementing and managing an intranet. And here's the second part of the slide. David Weinberger is an author and speaker about the effect of technology on ideas. He explored the effect of the internet and AI on knowledge, on how we organize our ideas, and on the core concepts by which we think about our world. He's a researcher at Harvard's Meta Lab. He's a writer in residence twice at Google AI Groups, the editor of the Strong Ideas book series for MIT Press. He's a fellow, senior researcher, and member of the Fellows Advisory Board at Harvard's Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. And he writes regularly the Perspective on Knowledge column for KM World magazine, which I certainly read every month. He's written and co-written a number of important books. One of the most important books at the start of the internet was the Clue Train Manifesto, which he was one of the authors. He's written a book called Small Pieces Loosely Joined, A Unified Theory of the Web. Everything is Miscellaneous, The Power of the New Digital Disorder. Too Big to Know, Rethinking Knowledge, and the details that follow there. And Everyday Chaos, Technology, Complexity, and How We're Thriving in a New World of Possibility. David is one of the outstanding thinkers about knowledge and thinking and ideas, and all of his books are excellent. And our final insight that we'll share as part of the webinar today comes from David about what knowledge was, what knowledge is now, and where it's going. So what knowledge was in the past was it was curated, it was settled, it was scarce, orderly, and discrete. But it's changing to be inclusive, unsettled, overwhelming, messy, and linked. And his point related to this is that network knowledge may or may not be truer about the world, but it is truer about human knowing. So he's talking about the fact that how we manage knowledge, what it was, how it existed, has changed over time, and certainly it will continue to change over time, especially now in the era of artificial intelligence. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Brad. I thank you for your attention on this webinar, and I encourage you to go back and pause the recording on each of the individual insight slides so you can get a better feel for the details contained on each one. Brad?
Thank you, Stan, for the wonderful presentation. And to our audience, please feel free to visit our website where you can download a copy of one of the books shown here, which are Stan and Lucidea Press's previous collaborations. If you have any questions on any of our software, our company, or would like to reach out to Stan, the contact details are listed on the screen. And please stay tuned for more webinars and content related to this series. On behalf of the Lucidea team, I thank you all for attending today, and until next time, thanks.